Hey, well, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're here. We've been planning this for a little bit of time now,
Yes.
so I'm so excited about everyone just having the chance to get to know you, learn more about your story, learn more
Right.
about your brand. Of course, I know everyone can't wait to hear about this Shein collection.
Yes.
That's the big one. That's like a big moment for you this year. So I definitely can't wait to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know your story. I want them to walk away feeling like, oh, wow, like I want to support her. How can I get involved? How can I contribute?
Yeah.
I love it. So that's my goal here. So thank you so much for joining. I have my
Absolutely.
notes and my questions. Um, so I want you to tell everyone a little bit about you before we go deep into your brand and all the cool things you're working on. Tell them about, who you are, where you're from, and yeah, what you do.
Well, I'm Ngozika O'keke. I'm a native of Little Rock, Arkansas. I moved out to Los Angeles to go full time with my clothing brand about a little over 8 years ago, so 2013. And ever since then, I kind of hit the ground running, and that's what I've been focusing on most while I'm in LA. And it's been an interesting, it's been a roller coaster of opportunity. I say that every time someone asks me about it because, as an entrepreneur, somebody that kind of steps out to do their thing, it's never just, success isn't linear. It doesn't just go in a straight line. You have one success here and like 100 fails over here, but they're really not fails either. So, you have to do what you got to do. But
Yeah.
back to the question. So I am a good fashion designer. I primarily design women's clothing. And aside from that, kind of an entrepreneur, and just in the very general sense, because I just like business. And that goes
Mm-hmm.
back to kind of, I have degrees in business, but I don't directly, I use them now for my fashion business. So I was in a marketing firm for a while. I taught as an adjunct professor for a while. I worked private sector for a while. And so all of those experiences kind of just together just blended into this interesting, person that couldn't figure out exactly where I wanted to kind of step into and stay into. But fashion for me seems to be that feel good place. And so that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you mentioned that because a lot of times we all have a process to coming to that realization of, oh, wow, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, it's cool because you were able to kind of still go on those separate paths and work in those
Right.
different, industries and kind of get a little bit closer to, fashion.
Yeah.
But did you always have a passion for fashion? What was that like kind of arriving at that moment of, okay, this is something that I want to explore more? Was it a hobby first? How
Uh-huh.
was that for you?
I think, well, I've always been creative. So, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of making crafts and coming up around the house, tearing up clothes and kind of sewing scraps together. I think a lot of people do that, right? Coming up. So I think doing that, but I can say when I really, really got serious about it, I was halfway through undergrad, and I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
decided on my way home from classes, like, yeah, I think I want to make fashion design a business for myself. And it really just started with that one decision. And then from there, I went to Walmart with my $70, the last 70 I
Hey.
had for the week, okay, because you know how college is. But with my $70, I bought a sewing machine and I started teaching myself how to sew. And it kind of just went from there. I actually started out making bags and duffel bags first, and then I started teaching myself how to make clothing. Um, and then from there, it kind of just, I had a mentor that that's now a dear friend of mine. And she basically said, okay, so in November, you're going to debut your first collection. And I'm like, girl, what? But it turned out that it was the right choice because I think what I would have done, and I think what a lot of us do, is that we know we want to do something, but we find reasons to stall that beginning. And I think we kind of do ourselves a disservice because we let fear get in the way of the things that we really want to do. But what I can say, just kind of having the ups and downs of like entrepreneurship, there really is no perfect time to start anything.
I love that.
You can prepare, but I don't think you're ever really ready. And I think Even when I moved to LA, kind of the same thing. I mean, I prepared for just a little bit, and I kind of went there with what I had. But I honestly can say you can prepare, you can try to get ready, but I think you're never really ready to jump out and start something new, especially if you don't have, if your family hasn't done this before, if your circle hasn't done it before, and even if you haven't seen it from anyone else before. So it's hard getting things, or I'm not going to say hard, it's a challenge starting things that you haven't seen someone else in your world do before you. And I think that that's like one of those things, like, yeah.
No, and I love how, you said that you just made that decision of, okay, this is something that I want to do. You actioned on it. It seemed very quick of going to Walmart. But it's just, I love that vibe of being self-taught. And I think that's something that we're seeing more and more and more. Like you do have like the school route, right, where you can learn it somewhere.
For sure.
And then you have YouTube University is what I call it. But just
they come in the clutch. YouTube has everything.
Yeah, but I think it just shows people too, like looking at your story of like, I can do this too. Like it's never too late to start. You just have to be willing to put that time in, like whether you learned it in a kind of school setting or in your apartment, are you willing to do the work regardless, really? Like, am I willing to kind of stay up, watch the videos, buy the material, practice? I'm sure you had to see, like, if your friends could wear some of the stuff, like, hey, what do you all think?
Listen, people, now that I think about it, I'm like, God bless my friends and my family. I had them wearing rags, okay? And they was like, my friend made this, and blah, blah, blah. And I look at some of that stuff now, and I'm just like, it's really the support for me. It really is. Because they were really, truly buying into the idea that I had that I wanted to go forward with this fashion thing. And, I'm just thankful for that support. And a lot of times that support doesn't come from the avenues that you think it will come from.
Yeah.
A lot of times you expect support to come from this place, and it does not, and it comes from over here. And you have to roll with that too, because that's just kind of all part of the process, So you can't really get stuck on like who's supporting and who's not. You just have to kind of do what you want to do, and I feel like the support will come from wherever it's going to come from. But you can't worry about that when you first get started, or even now.
I agree, and that's a good point too. Like, did you at any point feel like, oh man, people aren't buying from me, right? Because I hear that so often where some people that you think are going to be the ones that buy and whatever, they may not, right? And a lot of times your customers are just strangers or people online. Did you have to navigate that space at all?
Absolutely. I think probably the first 5 years I was really doing things, stuff was selling in boutiques, and I had my first little website going, and that first 5 years was really interesting because I felt like I was maxing out, doing as much as I could, and now I see, I wasn't, but the effort was being put in, right? So I think that support from the people that you expected to come from, that is a really, really humbling thing. Because like I said, a lot of times that support doesn't come from the people that you would expect it. That support most times comes from people that don't even know you, quite honestly. It comes from complete strangers. It comes from people that you just kind of meet along the way. You never know where that exposure is coming from or where that support is going to come from. But nonetheless, again, you can't really worry about the support not coming from the people that you thought were going to support you initially. Because in the end, once you start really blossoming, and whatever your business is, whenever it starts taking off, I feel like that is when the people who you may have expected to support, on the front end, then they'll kind of trickle in and come in, and it's like, okay, you see it.
No, yeah.
So, I think they just have to, it just takes people sometimes a while to kind of buy into what you're doing. And
I think so. And it really is a distraction, right? Easier said than done. I do think everyone kind of goes through that phase of
because it'll hurt your feelings.
Right. It'll have you feeling a type of way. It'll have you feeling a type of way. And I think sometimes people have to see what I realized is that everyone isn't meant to see the vision in the beginning. For some people, they literally have to see it. They have to see it all the way through to feel like, oh, that's what she was getting to. Okay, I see it now, right? You have kind of those people that's coming on the later ends. Because the vision is meant for us, right? The person who has it, you know, kind of what you're working towards. But yeah, I definitely want to touch on that. But let's talk about your move to LA. So you were in Arkansas, right? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, so primarily in Arkansas. I mean, you know, the South is the South, right? Moved to LA. I say it all the time, but what I can fit in my car, girl, I have my clothes, my gun, my Bible, and my purse. I'm still in Arkansas. Oh my God. But yeah, I drove. It took, I think it was a 26-hour drive or something ridiculous. Who was that from Jacksonville? Hey. But I think it was like a 26-hour drive. Literally got there, no apartment lined up, no job lined up, nothing. Wow. I found my apartment the day that I got to LA. I think I got there with like maybe $2,000 in my pocket. And that was at the time I was in grad school. So that was what my refund check was. I mean, let's be real. So shout out to Bachelor for that. So shout out. That, right? Because it saved me so many times. But I took that and was like, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. And that was that weekend. I think I left on a Friday and I made it on a Monday. And I knew that if I didn't go that time and do that, it wasn't going to happen. And it was just a series of crazy circumstances because I was actually going to move somewhere with someone that was a friend of mine at the time. And we were going to move somewhere completely different. She pulled out at the last minute. And by that time, I had already broke my lease, moved all my stuff out of my apartment. And I'm like, nah, I'm going somewhere. And I might as well go to Cali since that's kind of been in the back of my mind anyway. So that's kind of another lesson I learned. Like, you know, a success or something that you need could sometimes be wrapped up in another disappointment. And
ooh, you just said a word.
Okay.
That was a word. That was good. Say it one more time.
But yeah, I think a success can be wrapped up in a disappointment. Because for me, that was really disappointing because she and I had discussed it so long. And then at the very last minute, decided like, oh, I'm not going to go. And at that time, like I said, I had already broke my lease, moved out my stuff out of my apartment. I'm just like, ooh, child, okay. I've been thinking about Cali, so let me go ahead and go. And it was literally just that easy. So I was like, if all else fails, I can just go back home.
And how long have you been in LA now? How many years?
Oh my gosh, it's been almost 9 years in LA, almost. And I just could not believe it. I still feel like I just got there some days. It's a massive place. There is so much to see. And LA is not just LA, like Los Angeles, what you would think, because that's what I thought. I had never been to LA before. So when I got there, it was a shock to see that, okay, you have Los Angeles County, but you have Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, Culver City, downtown LA. It's so many smaller cities that are there, and everywhere is completely different, which is nice. So I think that's what keeps you there so long, and you don't even realize you've been there a long time.
No, I get that. A quick question for you in the chat. How old were you when you moved to LA?
Oh.
You like, wait, someone's trying to do the math. Oh my God. I think they're just trying to get a sense of, you know, when you say graduating from grad school, it's like, okay, were you young and just trying to figure out what's going on?
I was. And now that I think about it, I don't even think that I would recommend that anyone just kind of up and go with nothing. It's like, ooh, I don't know. Like, I did it, and I know that people can absolutely do it. Thank you, Quan. I appreciate that. And I know people can absolutely do it. But I also, with that though, I also recognize the fact that I have the privilege of education. Because I'm not going to act like with the struggles that I had, although, you know, I moved there. At the time, I was leaving a marketing firm. And then when I got to LA, I was able to become an adjunct professor for like a couple semesters to kind of bridge the gap while I figured things out. So, yeah, let me not just act like I went, you know, like it was not that either, because I know I always had that option.
But that's a good call out, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, you were able to kind of use that job to kind of find your way. Sure. But it's still just incredible because for a lot of people, without having that safety net, right? Like that place of, okay, I know where my apartment is, and having everything so perfect and set up, it would have made people like, okay, let me go back with parents and try to, maybe it's not my time. Like it's so easy to look at that as a sign of turn back around, right? Because it's like, oh, it didn't quite go how I thought it was going to go. And what if I'm not meant to go there? So I think it's really amazing that you still went forward. Like, no, I'm going somewhere. I'm going to figure it out. What do you think has been like the impact of LA as far as your career? Do you think that you would have had the same opportunities if you stayed in Arkansas, or do you think that was a huge difference going to LA as far as just the trajectory of your career?
I know that moving to California, or LA in particular, to do fashion was the best decision to date that I've made in my life. Because I know for a fact that I would not have come across the amount of opportunities, or just even the kind of opportunities that I've come across in LA or in Arkansas, because it's just, the industry is different there. I came here to do something that seemed a little flowery, back home. It's like, how are you gonna make a living, doing fashion or doing, on-set tailoring for music videos and this and that. And it's like that kind of thing at that time just wasn't happening in my city. And, now almost a decade later, there's been a lot of growth there. So there are some opportunities there now but they just didn't exist when I was there. Because again, this is almost 10 years ago now. So it's a little different now. But I know hands down, just the fashion opportunities, the designing, just kind of bridging the gap and having, gigs in between, like fashion things to do. None of that was available for me at that time. The thing that I was actually going to be able to probably keep doing, though, was marketing, which is what my professional, degrees are in. And that's totally fine. But, I just knew I wanted to do something a little different. And I'm happy that I made that decision for sure.
That's so cool. And you mentioned it, so let's talk about that for a little bit. Doing on-set tailoring for music videos. How did you get into that? How fun is that? Like, I just want to...
Right? So that just kind of fell in my lap. And that's another thing about just being location. Your proximity to things happening. Your proximity to opportunity is paramount if you want any type of true success. That's despite what industry you're in. You just need to put yourself in a place where you're available to go take advantage of those opportunities. And for me, that was LA, or or New York, or Chicago, wherever there's some things going on with fashion. But that just kind of fell in my lap, literally, because I just happened to have been in LA, and that again is something that I know I wouldn't have been able to do had I still been elsewhere, right? So it was just like a friend of a friend of a friend. It was like, hey, I know a designer. It's like, yeah, she's a designer, but does she actually sew stuff and make stuff? It's like, yeah, she actually sews. And then that turned into a phone call, which turned into an email and another phone call. And then I'm on a video set, like tailoring suits for like rap videos. And so it's really interesting how stuff plays out sometimes, for sure.
It is, because you think back and it's like in college you were teaching yourself how to sew, and those same skills are used later, and it's like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. It's not a thing of, oh, I need to go learn. I'm sure you learn things, continuously through life, but it's like, oh, this is what I've been practicing for. And I think a lot of times we don't really know how things are going to show up in the future, but we just know at that moment, like, oh, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn that. And it's just really cool when you have the opportunity, but you don't have to go get ready because you're already ready.
Yeah, that's true. And like the skills, I don't know, I feel like some stuff that you, like you said, you don't know how it's going to show up in the future. Some things, you're sitting in class and you're going to that home ec class, or you're going to the sewing class, and you're like, that's not even what I want to do. But you never know that putting a little bit of time into learning that skill, you don't even have to be a master at it, You just need to, a lot of stuff you just need to know enough to get the conversation started, know enough to deliver the product or whatever you need to do. And I feel like most times that's what gets your foot in the door with a lot, again, irrespective of whatever industry you're in.
How has it been, and not just because it's LA, but just wherever you were living at, right? Like in LA, you're doing your thing. How does it feel market wise? Does it feel like it's like, oh my gosh, like, did you ever find yourself looking at oh, this designer or that designer, or just any type of comparison, or were you able to just kind of, what was that like for you though?
Oh, for sure. Even now I have to check myself about that. I think comparison, especially when you're in a market that's really oversaturated, like fashion, comparison is that thing that creeps in, and if you kind of harp on that a little bit too long, it does something to your morale, right? And I think it kind of makes you question what you do. It makes you question what you offer. It makes you question, are you good enough to really say that you offer this as far as your product or your service or whatever? And it can just kind of crumble your business and your art from the inside out. And but like I said, we're all human, and I think at some point in our careers, especially if you're if you hit that dip, if you hit a low point in that career, and you think like, okay, nothing's selling. I put out 6 designs this quarter, nothing sold, everything oversold. Now I have a bunch of inventory. Now this, that, or whatever. And then you look at another designer that may be doing well, seemingly well, right? And you don't really know their story. You just know what you see. Whatever, it's on their website, it's on their Instagram, it's on whatever. But I think that comparison, what do they say? It's like the thief of joy or something like that. But I think that's so true. That's so true. And especially in the arts, because if you're in something that, me being Nigerian, right? So my family, they're all about education and, success. And it's like this cookie cutter ideal. They have this cookie cutter idea of what success looks like. So we laugh about it because we call it the African trifecta. Doctor, lawyer, engineer. Which one you want to get? Because it's one of them. Like, that's it. And that's their only way to kind of judge what is success for them and what they want for their children. Because everyone wants their children to do better than they did, right? So that's completely understandable. So for me saying like, oh yeah, y'all, I want to do fashion, they're like, okay, that's cute, but you need to finish getting your business degrees first. And so it's like, but I also did business because it's super, it's something general. You can apply that to anything, no matter what you want to do.
I agree.
So that has been the reason I think it's been another easy transition for me to kind of use, obviously, that business stuff for my own business. But back to the comparison thing, I think all artists do that. That's why whenever I come up with a collection, when I am trying to think of a way to innovate what I'm doing, I cut off all contact with any social media that's like fashion related. I don't buy any fashion magazines. I make it a point not to look at any other art that's coming from other people. And excuse me. And I know for some people that inspires them. They want to be filled with those images, but I don't. That's not the way I work. So I just kind of like to isolate myself and come up with my own thing, so I cannot be influenced by whatever it is that they're doing. And so you won't start comparing, because once you start comparing, once you start saying, like for me, in my case, like it's been 14 years I've been doing this. It's people that I know that have been doing this a third of the time that I've been doing it, and that I feel are much more successful at this than I am. But again, my journey is different. Everyone's journey is different. So
our journeys are different
too, because there's so much other stuff I've done along the way that I know that they may not be able to say that, and vice versa. So you really just can't even look at it that way, because your story is your own, your journey is your own, and you just can't compare it. You can't.
Yeah, and I think that's what keeps us authentic, right? I like when you were saying that you kind of limit, especially when you're about to get in your zone, kind of limit what you're seeing, because it is easy to go down those rabbit holes. So I like that you've kind of found your system, right? Like, not meaning it's always perfect, but found that way of like, oh, I'm going down that path, that comparison path. Let me reel it back in. So I think that's just, super important. But I want to transition a little bit and talk about this collection. Yes. And we have a few people that join, and if you all have questions, just drop it in the comments and stuff.
That's so true. What Quan said, he's like, it's easy to kind of bite other styles once you look at the design too long. That's so true.
Yeah.
That's why I want to kind of like, I take myself away from that as to not be influenced by what they're doing. Because then before you know it, you can put two, side by side shots of a runway. It happens every day. With life. So it's like, I don't want to do that. Hey, Sonia.
No, I agree. I agree. And that's why it's just, I see the benefit of like, yeah, we can get inspiration, but knowing where to draw that line and kind of like, all right, I got my inspiration. Let me, let me take a break. Yeah. So please tell us about the SHEIN collection. How did you feel? How did it come about? Like we want all the tea.
Oh my God. So SHEIN, it came about in the most random way. So we were in talks about that, I would say probably since like 2019. That was almost 2 years in the making. So just kind of a backstory. So I had, again, it's a friend of a friend of a friend. I feel like LA is small that way. It's small in the sense of like the fashion industry, the fashion community there. So anyway, so fast forward, had a friend of a friend of a friend that had a contact that was plugged in with SHEIN, and they were, I guess, just looking for ways to kind of further develop just their collaboration with independent designers. So it just kind of made sense. So I just hit them up like, hey, y'all, like, you know, what's going on with this? Is this program to move forward? Are we going to do that? Or maybe let's like discuss the possibility of doing a program like this, working directly with independent designers, and, you know, let a year go by. That's another thing, time. Because time will be the thing that I think that discourages people from, and this is a whole other side story, but time will be another thing that discourages people from moving forward if they feel as though the amount of time it's taking to do something is in vain. So that's another thing, I think, just patience, because it could take a long time to get some stuff done. Because like I said, this SHEIN thing was almost 2 years in the making. So,
and that's what's interesting, because we see the result, right, of like, oh, wow. And it's like 2 years. No one knows what went into that, what was going on behind the scenes. And can you shed a little bit more light onto why it took so long?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just, they're an enormous company. And what I didn't even realize, I knew they were big. I didn't know they were that big until I started working with them. You know, it's departments you have to go through. You have to go through the red tape. You have to go through the legal. You have to go through the creative, the design team. And once you just kind of get through those blocks in a company, when you know, you realize it's been 9-10 months already. And so I think, especially when the program is still pretty new. So at that time, the program didn't even exist, really. So I think just kind of having them develop it, put the program together, you know, how they were actually going to run it, how, you know, I mean, just every part of it. It's a lot of moving pieces, I think, in that collection or in that collaboration to do those collections. So I think it takes a little time. But now it's a pretty, I won't say quick, I'll just say it's a much smoother process. So now it may take only 6 or 7 months. And to some people, I know that still sounds like, oh my God, but that sounds so long. But no, it's really not, because I think once you really get in and you get to moving and you're, you know, approving stuff and you're sending tech packs and you're working with design team over here and the pattern team over here and you're choosing the color of this and you got to send this sample back because it's not right. Once you get through all of that, the time goes pretty quick. So I think it's all in all, it's been a really good experience, and I'm really happy to have done it. So I say it all the time, like, we need y'all to run the numbers up, okay?
I know that's real.
The first collection with them, and I'll say first because I'm going to put it out there, but it's going to be the first of a few. But I wanted to be the first collection with them for the full figure ladies, because I still feel like, I mean, you know, that's a segment of the market that's still really underserved. So, and that was kind of part of the reason I started designing initially anyway, because I remember being younger, going shopping with my mom, and I think at the time she was maybe like a size 22 something, and I just remember it not being a lot of options for her. And my mom has always been a really fashionable chick, right? And so, and super curvy and all that, and I'm just like, wow, that's so crazy that you didn't even, like, they didn't really have a lot of stuff for y'all.
Yeah.
But so who knew that, you know, 20 years later, it'll come back around and give me the opportunity to design directly for that market, and just getting the emails and kind of like the DMs. I knew I made the right decision. Like, now that it's been out and now that I kind of get feedback, I know that was the right decision for sure.
And it's just exciting, you know, to see us there, you know, like we've all been on the consumer end, just scrolling and whatnot. And I think Amazon, SHEIN, a lot of companies are starting to really do a lot of partnerships and, you know, collaborations and stuff like that. So I know you said that it's a program. Like, does the program last a certain amount of time, or how does the program work?
For the time, sir?
For SHEIN, for SHEIN to, oh, sorry. For how does the program work for SHEIN? Because you said it was a program, right? Did they choose different designers to kind of collaborate with the collection?
Right. So you basically connect with their creative team. So the program altogether, it's called SHEIN X. So it's like SHEIN and then X and then whatever your brand is. So like SHEIN and whoever. So you basically connect with their team, and you start by sending off your digital CAD. So CAD is like computer assisted design. So me being a self-taught designer, I didn't do any of that. I was sitting on my dorm room floor cutting fabric and sewing it together. So I didn't know anything about the computer programs to like digitally draw anything. I didn't know anything about that. So that was something that was introduced to me once I actually got to LA, and I really saw how the business of fashion works, like on a grand scale. And that is just one of the things that comes with the business. You know, a lot of people produce overseas. So basically a CAD pack is something that you basically sketch out your design, and all of your specs for that piece of clothing is on that CAD pack. So math is universal. So that is one thing that you can take, and it can be easily translated into whatever language of, you know, whatever company you're sending it to produce for you. What they may not understand, you know, the wording, but they understand those numbers. 7.5 inches is 7.5 inches everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
The neckline, if it's 13 centimeters, it's going to be 13 centimeters everywhere. So it's like it just makes it it levels the playing field when you're producing clothing. So you start out with that first. So I had to get a CAD designer, Lauren. Shout out to Lauren. She's amazing. She's a really good graphic designer. I know she did a lot of computer-assisted design. She had never done any fashion computer-assisted design. But she and I actually worked together on a contract. Again, how things come back around.
Yeah.
She and I worked together on a contract that I have for marketing for another company maybe 5-6 years ago. And I thought about her when it was time to start submitting those technical drawings of the collection. And yeah, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll try it. Like I've never done it before, but like let's do it." I'm like, "Well, girl, me either." So I guess we both. So
right.
It was, it worked. So you send out those sketches first, and that's the first thing. The team, they take a look at it. They start making the patterns from it. They get some samples out. You approve, deny, whatever. You pick out the colors, all of that. And I think it starts just like that, and you go through the approval process, and from there, it's on the app. It's at market. So.
That has to be so amazing to actually see it, right? Like you go through all this stuff for months and for however long, and then it's like, okay, it's there. How has everything changed for you since that collection is launched? What have you seen has been different?
I think just changing as far as just opportunity. I think there has been a lot more opportunity to open up because, again, SHEIN is a global company. So it's crazy the amount of exposure that they have, right?
Yeah.
I think as an independent designer, you can have an amazing work, but that's the thing that stops, potentially your business from thriving, just having that exposure consistently. So I think that's one thing, just the exposure, the amount of eyes that I've been able to get on my brand, on the collection that I did for them, and then subsequently on my brand. Because they tag you and everything, they mention your name and everything, which is amazing for independent designers that may otherwise not have that exposure. So that's one thing for sure. So it's like immediately after the collection dropped, start fielding emails like, "Hey, we saw your SHEIN collection on so and so. Could we do a collaboration?" Or "I'm an influencer. I ordered all your stuff. Like I'll let you know when I do like a haul." Or so it's just a lot of. You just never know what kind of exposure are going to come, from the things that you do. So that's why I just always say, kind of like, stay open to opportunities, but also every opportunity that comes your way is not for you either. So it just depends, because that's another thing.
Right. I'm like, that's another conversation for another day. That's and having that discernment. Enough to know like, okay, should I kind of go in this direction or not? But yeah, I totally agree with you. I have like three more questions. I know it's late where you are.
No,
This
you're
is
fine.
so
I've
much
gotten a
fun.
lot of good sleep since I've been here. So I'm like, I need that.
No, I'm glad that you know, are able to get some rest. I have a few more. So I want to know what keeps you going. I know on your page you've documented like your fibroid journey, but you have a lot going on and things that, you know, I know are in the works for you, but what keeps you going?
Ooh, I would say one thing, just I know that when I kind of envision this, fashion, I say it all the time, this fashion thing. But when I envision this fashion thing for myself, I just don't, I always saw the me being that success. And I feel like what I needed to do to kind of reach that point was reverse engineering. So,
Mm.
you got to go backwards and like figure out how to get there. And I'm still not there, right? So I think that's one thing, just the vision that I've seen for myself. Because if you really have a clear picture of what you want to do and where you want to go, and you just keep that picture there, I truly believe you can manifest it. So I think that's one thing. Also, my family. So my dad is an immigrant to America. My mom was from the States, though. And I know just growing up, like I saw how hard they were working just kind of together to really make sure that we had a future that was better than the life that they were living, right? And so I think, and even like back home in Nigeria, my dad's place, like I
Mm-hmm.
think seeing how family, once they see a little bit of the success that you're able to obtain, it sparks something in the family.
Yeah.
And I think that that truly helps to propel the next generation. So that's another thing for me. That's a biggie, your family. Because you see
Yeah.
as a child, like how your parents do their best. And I think it's when you get older and as an adult, then you think back on that, like, child, they were 28 or they were 27 and they were trying to
Yes.
they really had this whole thing and they were really truly trying to
They
grow
were
up
figuring it out.
and figure it out. Yeah, and they were still growing up. And so now when you think about that, it's like they've been working for a long time to make sure that these little humans that they produce, had the best quality of life possible. And so that's another thing too, just trying to make sure that I can take care of them. And then just helping other people. I think you probably know about the brand, donating a portion of like the proceeds to
Yes.
organizations that work with survivors of assault and abuse. I think being a survivor myself, once you go through that and you kind of and you go through that process after, whether it be the legal, the medical, the all that stuff, you
Yeah.
realize the disparities in the quality of resources that are available to certain people. And so that's another thing. I wanted to make sure that I could bridge that gap for people that are going through that process of recovery, because I know that at that time that I was going through that process, there were a lot of broken pieces in the chain. So those are kind of my three motivators. The fact that I've seen the vision and I don't stop until I get there, my family, and people that I don't even know that are going to need some sort of, help or some sort of help with some resources. Those are kind of my three whys.
No, and those are big ones, and that's enough to keep, I would think, the fuel going, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so, and I saw that too on your site that you donate to nonprofits that help survivors of abuse. So I think that is amazing, and that's, to me, that's real impact, right?
Yeah.
Like we can say like, oh yeah, like, I support this or that, but I feel like you're actually making a change in that way. So
sure.
I think that is really, really, really nice. So I'm happy that you're doing that. And it's things that we can all learn from, right? Like, okay, how can I actually contribute? Because sometimes you don't really know how you can contribute, but there's always a way, right, to help someone else and to give back. So I think that's just a great example of and how you're doing it, right, with your business. Still your love for fashion, but how can I help someone else?
Yeah. It's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, of course. So what's next for you? Like we have this amazing collection, but what do you think 2022 is going to look like for you?
What I'm working on right now is sort of a rebrand. So coming up in the next few months, I will say that finally, after so long, I think I'll focus on some red carpet themes. So I want to be, yeah, it's been interesting. It's crazy. So I think that's one thing that as a designer, like a women's wear designer or, whatever you design, I think kind of getting some focus to your brand. I feel like now I have my perspective. Now I have my voice as a designer for what I want to put out there. And so I'm going to gradually start shifting the brand toward that, toward that way. And I'm really happy about what's to come. I would say, if you see like, oh, what are you wearing? Like, oh, this is Ngozika O'keke.
Yes. Yes.
So that's next.
Speak it. No, I'm excited for that. I can't wait to see, what you're going to be doing. And last question is, any advice for up and coming designers?
Oh, yeah. Number one, the time. Because again, I mention that all the time because I want to just make it very, very clear that you may not, or you might, depending on how you come into it, right? If you get like on a show, then that's like almost a guaranteed catapult to some exposure and some level of success, right? But I think the time, if you get into it thinking that you're gonna, have some sort of like uber success or that you really don't have to put that work in, I think that is a great misunderstanding that a lot of artists have, particularly in fashion, because again, it is so saturated. So don't get frustrated with the amount of time that it may take you to get, to get wherever you need to go. And learn your craft, because I can say I ran into some, other fashion people that it's just like, how are you doing this? But you don't really know kind of like the ins and outs of it. So just learn your craft, and that not even just fashion. I think that's with anything.
Yeah.
Like that's really no shade. But I think learning your craft and having a solid foundation in whatever it is you're doing it just makes sense. Right? Even if you don't do it that way, even if that's not your process, just learn your craft. Learn enough about it to be knowledgeable so that you can kind of move freely through your industry and not, for one, get taken advantage of. Because I see that with so many like younger designers starting out, like spending $10,000 and $20,000 to get people to make patterns and samples, and I'm just like, oh, child. Like you had that to spare? Like what do you do?
Right, that part.
But, yeah, it's like what? But I think that's why it's really important for you to know, kind of have a foundation of what your craft is, so you can know, how it's supposed to go, so you won't get taken advantage of. So I think that's a biggie too, because you can waste a lot of time and money.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen. Well, this has been amazing. This has been so awesome. Please let everyone know where they can find you. Of course, they can click on your name, but just where they should go to learn more about what you do and how they can support you.
Well, you can find me on my Insta. So actually, I'm going to put the link in my stories today because I try to link it every few days, put the link directly to the SHEIN collection because I saw somebody asking about that. So I'll put it in my stories as soon as we get off live. But you can find me on my Insta, Fashion Diva Ngo, that's Ngo. And the links to my other two brands are in that bio. And pretty much everything that I have to offer is you can find on that page. The website link, the other brands. So it's all there. Check it out.
Yes, check it out. Show her some love.
Yes.
Like, check out the website. Just
Please.
let's just let's support Black-owned businesses. So I'm so excited. I'm so happy that we were able to do this.
It's been a while. Like I feel like we've been trying to do this for so long.
I know, and I'm just so happy that we were able to do it. Everyone's enjoying this. Oh, that's so good.
Thank you guys for joining and watching.
Awesome. Well, please enjoy the rest of your vacation. I will save this live and post it and send it to you, so we'll have it. But thank you. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Now I'm gonna go back. I'll be outside and eat. Go back to the beach.
Yes.
I'm gonna do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
All right. Bye.